Oh hi, it's Arduinotronic here again, and welcome to my New Year video. And as well as wishing you all a Happy New Year, I'm going to go through some of my predictions for 2016 about what may be going to happen in a few areas. But first of all, I've got another thank you for another Christmas present. This one arrived late, and this one's from Patrick. A brilliant Pyrex tea mug with the letter M on it, and several packets of really high grade nice tea. This one's Darjeeling. Cheers Patrick, thanks very much. So on with a few predictions. Now some of you might expect me to be all doom and gloom about 2016, but I'm not completely all doom and gloom. And the reason why is war. War? What's to be happy about? Well, what's to be happy about is that I now no longer think that this is going to happen, at least not in 2016. And my reasons why are quite simple. The Western nations are somewhat stymied, and they can't really pull the plug and create a Third World War simply because of Russia's actions. And the leader of the Western nations is of course America, and America has a well-known allergy since Vietnam against putting boots on the ground. They'll put a few boots down, they'll send the special forces in, but sending in tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of troops simply politically would not be an option. And Putin knows this. So Putin's got the US backed into a corner. And how has he achieved this? Well, you may not have heard about this because mainstream media, there was a few little articles about some Soviet bomber buzzing a US warship, but the real story didn't really make it out on the news. So here we go. The real story is that in late 2014, the USS Donald Cook, which is a fourth generation guided missile destroyer with the latest Aegis battlefield system electronics, with cruise missiles coming out of the wazoo, was being gently prodded into the Black Sea to get somewhere near the Russian border. And an Su-24 Russian bomber flew over. Now this bomber wasn't at all armed. All it had was an electronic warfare pod underneath containing a warfare system that the Russians call Kibini. What that means in Russian, Lord alone knows. But what it did was rather impressive. Immediately all of this warship's systems went offline. Every single one. All the radars, of which the ship has several, the control systems, the fire control systems, navigation systems, and practically every electronic circuit on the ship went haywire, went dead, or stopped responding. And with the ship floating, blind, crippled and helpless, the Su-24 turned round and did simulated attacks. Remember, the plane wasn't armed, but it did simulated bombing runs no fewer than 12 times against this state-of-the-art battleship, whose systems have been completely paralysed by this new Soviet electronic warfare equipment. So what does this mean? Well, what this means is that no American carrier battle group is actually safe against the Russians. So what this means is that from a naval point of view, forget it. From a naval point of view, none of the Western nations are going to go up against Russia. Now, to date, we don't think that the Russians have sold this system to anyone else. We think they're keeping it to themselves. Unlike the S-400 missile system. And this too is a game changer, and it's a game changer for air warfare. And there's some reasons why. This missile system is hypersonic. it can travel at enormous speeds, and therefore it can shoot down hypersonic aircraft and hypersonic weapons. It can certainly take down American spy planes, for example. Its range is such that in theory, whether it's been tried or not, Lord knows, but in theory it could also take down satellites, the larger of the missiles. And the most devastating thing about this missile system really is it uses a networked radar system. You can plug almost any Russian military radar into the network, whether it's man-portable on the back of a truck being driven around, or a static base station at an airfield, and the missile's command and control centre, which is separate from the missile batteries themselves, can easily cope with reading all the data, allocate targets, and this is a really big problem for US Air Force with its investment in stealth technology. And to realise why this is, you have to think a bit about why they went for stealth and how stealth technology works. Stealth technology has two components. The first is absorbing radar beams. Now this can never be done anywhere near 100%. You can get around about 55 to 60% of the way towards stealth by absorbing the beams using coatings. So the rest of the technology depends on the shape of the aircraft, and the aircraft is specially shaped so that it deflects the radar beam away from the transmitter. Unfortunately, with a distributed radar system, with a central command and control which is capable of reading the information and data from all of the receivers and all of the transmitters, then this is of limited use, because yes, you're reflecting it away from the beam from the incoming transmitter, but in all probability you're reflecting the radar back onto a different receiver which is still capable of interpreting the data. So the AS400 is potentially deadly against stealth aircraft, as well as all the other things that it's deadly to. And it goes further than that, because Russia is selling this weapon system. It's already sold to the Chinese, and a deal has been signed with India. How long before Brazil buys their system? I don't know, but it certainly seems to be the BRICS countries that are taking it up. So now you have naval warfare ruled out, you have air warfare ruled out. What's left? Boots on the ground. And we all know the Americans aren't going to do that. So the chances of World War III being set off in the Middle East have actually been reduced quite a lot. So that's the good news. And now for two pieces of not so good news. And the first bit of not so good news really is around the economy. Now, Russia launched an internal version of the SWIFT payment systems so that it didn't freeze up all its internal companies quite a long time ago, and this has been very successful. And the Chinese talked for a long time about releasing an international payment system based on the yuan renminbi, the Chinese currency, as an alternative to the dollar for international trade. And a lot of people were thinking it wasn't going to happen. Well, once again, not very well covered by the mainstream media, it has actually happened. That payment system is now available worldwide, and it was launched somewhere in October this year, and so far the Chinese say that take-up has been quite good. Now, remember that America has used the SWIFT payment systems to wage economic war against countries it doesn't like, such as Russia, such as Syria, such as Iran. And these countries now have the option to use the Chinese payment system, and indeed reportedly are doing so. Now, this starts to magnify the international scope, the international availability and the international desirability of the Chinese currency, and that is directly at the expense of the dollar. And it's recently been announced that the Chinese plan a push on this new currency system to actually get more and more countries to accept it. And when is that push going to start? Early next year. And how does this affect the dollar? Very badly, because people will start to prefer the renminbi for trading. And the reason behind this is the fact that the SWIFT system is subject to surveillance by the US security forces and is also subject to direct interference by the US government, in that they can switch it off if you do something that they don't like. And so I foresee there's going to be a big take-up on this Chinese SWIFT system, and since a lot of the revenues on Visa, MasterCard, other companies that use the SWIFT system come through that system and through charges levied for use of the SWIFT system, then a lot of turnover is going to go missing from Western banks, which isn't going to help their already dire economic situation. And the US economy seems to continue to deteriorate, and the lies about it from the government seem to get wilder and wilder. Well, I say lies, they're more misrepresentations. Little things like saying, oh, the unemployment rate is only 5%, and that's kind of disregarding the 30% unemployed that they don't count because, hey, they're not looking for work. These are the so-called discouraged workers. The reason they're discouraged is there's no jobs for them. It's as simple as that. So it is genuine unemployment. And in 2016 I don't see this improving at all. In fact, I can see this situation getting rather worse. And a while ago, this is about this time last year, maybe a bit later, I did a video on when is the US dollar going to collapse, and I predicted that the start of the collapse was going to be May 2016, and from what I can see, I'm still standing by that prediction. That somewhere around May, April 2016, the dollar will start a more rapid slide, and that people will stop accepting the dollar for international payments, maybe move to the renminbi, maybe move to a payment system as yet unannounced. There are rumours that there are more in the pipeline, that Russia is going to launch another one based on the Chinese system, but who knows? These are only rumours, they're only speculation, but certainly the field seems to be opening up. On the gold front, and I know a lot of you are interested in gold, gold mine closures, some substantial ones and some pre-closure arrangements started this year with a couple of mines in Australia closing, which wiped out 125,000 ounces of annual production. Barrick Gold Corp, who are the world's largest gold miner, they plan to sell, close or scale back production at 12 of their 27 mines. And this can only be good for the gold price, because it will increase pressure on paper gold. It will increase pressure on people with physical gold. Already there's a gap opening up between the price of real physical gold, if you're buying in the sort of hundreds of kilos range, and the price of paper gold. You actually have to pay a lot more for the metal, and this is nuts. It basically means what's on the market doesn't in any way, shape or form reflect reality, but we all knew that, didn't we? Really. Now, the last time I did a gold video, somebody posted and said, oh, but there are no industrial uses for gold. Well, electronics, for example, uses 320 tons per year of approximately 2,400 tonnes that are mined. So that's just one. The space industry, practically everything that goes into space, all the satellites up there, the rockets that go up there, have to have a huge number of gold-plated parts. I don't have a tonnage figure for that. Dentistry, you may laugh, but there are an awful lot of people with gold fillings. I'm not one of them. But if you think about it, during World War II, when Hitler did that really nasty thing that we call the Holocaust, the amount of gold that he ripped out of those people's mouths was astonishing. It went into tons of gold. There were piles of gold teeth at Auschwitz. So if you've got a few million people requiring dentistry, a certain percentage want gold fillings. There's quite a lot of gold that goes into a tooth. It's quite a chunky amount, and therefore the amount of gold usage per year is actually quite high. And of course you've got other minority things like medical. Nowadays they actually inject gold into people for certain illnesses. If people need a scan and they need a radioactive isotope, a lot of people are allergic to barium or have problems with barium for one reason or another, and what they do is they use radioactive gold particles. Glass making. The glass industry uses a few tons of gold every year to make some of the pretty colours. Reds, for example, in glass are usually made with gold. Not to mention the Bank of Canada's windows, which are reputed to have around 50,000 ounces of gold in them. So yeah, there's plenty of industrial uses for gold, and they're increasing all the time. So the amount of gold that's mined is going down, the industrial uses are going up, the demand for physical gold is soaring, so the price can only go in one direction, yes? Upward. As long as they don't keep manipulating it. And people think they can't do that for much longer, because the amount of gold in comics is now at a record low compared to the number of actual commitments that there are. And the final thing I want to talk about is terrorism. Now, ISIL, whatever the hell you want to call them, are not doing very well at the moment in the war. This is because of Russia. And so their tactics, which have been successful up to now, which is conventional battlefield tactics using tanks, missiles, troops, beheadings and so on and so forth, don't seem to be bearing fruit anymore. So I'm going to suggest that we can expect an increase in international terrorism, an increase in Paris type incidents, an increase in bombings, simply because if they can't win one way, they're going to try and win another. So that's my take on terrorism. I think terrorism is going to be up in 2016. I think gold is going to be substantially up by the end of it. The risk of war is down, and unfortunately the dollar also will probably be substantially down by the end of 2016. So having said all that, I hope you have a really happy new year, and don't buy any wooden nickels, as they say. Thank you very much.
Arduinotronic, harmonic, ionic, bionic, atomic. It will astonish you, it's magical and casual, actual but classic.